Australians have voted for a future that holds true to these values, a future built on everything that brings us together as Australians and everything that sets our nation apart from the world. In this time of global uncertainty, Australians have chosen optimism and determination. Australians have chosen to face global challenges the Australian way, looking after each other while building for the future. And to serve these values, meet these challenges, seize these opportunities and build that better and stronger future, Australians have chosen a majority Labor government. I think the Australian people have got the name. A majority Labor government promised and delivered. A short time ago, I spoke with Peter Dutton, who has, of course, conceded defeat. And I thanked him. No. What we do in Australia is we treat people with respect. I thanked Peter for his generous words at the end of what has been a very hard-fought campaign. And I want to take this opportunity to wish Peter and Kirralie and their family all the very best for their future. Now, at election time, parties and candidates ask people to make a choice. And inevitably, the campaign and the coverage is about our differences and our disagreements. That is the nature of our democracy, and it is the role of the media who serve it. But now that the Australian people have made their clear choice, let us all reflect on what we have in common. Because no matter who you voted for, no matter where you live, no matter how you worship or who you love, whether you belong to a culture that has known and cared for this great continent for 65,000 years, or you have chosen our nation as your home and enriched our society with your contribution, we are all Australians. So let all of us work together to build our national unity on the enduring foundations of fairness, equality and respect for one another. My fellow Australians, I know the world has thrown a lot at our country over the past 3 years. I know so many of you have worked hard in the face of significant challenges, and I know there's still much more to do to help people under pressure. That is why it means so much that in these uncertain times, the people of Australia have placed their trust in Labor once again, including so many Australians who have voted Labor for the first time. I make this solemn pledge. We will not forget that. We will never take it for granted. Repaying your trust will drive our government each and every day of the next 3 years. The positive program we took to this election was shaped by the Australian people's priorities. And our government will dedicate the next 3 years to making a positive difference to your lives and to your future, bringing the rewards for your hard work within reach, investing in our youngest Australians, looking after older Australians. And building an economy and a society that is every bit as strong and fair, as resilient and generous as Australians are themselves. From tomorrow, back at work. Maybe not everyone here. And that's probably for the best. We take up this task with new hope, new confidence and new determination. Because together we are turning the corner, and together we will make our way forward with no one held back and no one left behind. Friends, I was raised to be an optimist. My mum had a hard life and we struggled financially. But she taught me to always be positive and see the best in people. When it comes to Australia's future, all of us have so much reason to be optimistic. Because when we look at everything going on around the world today, when we consider the changes that will shape the future of the global economy, when we think about our people and their smarts and skills, truly there's nowhere else you'd rather be than right here in Australia. This is a time of profound opportunity for our nation. We have everything we need to seize this moment and make it our own. And we must do it together, all of us, because for Australia to realise our full potential, for our nation to be its very best, every Australian must have the opportunity to be their best. To serve our Australian values, we must value every Australian, and Labor will govern for every Australian. Every Australian who wants a fair go at work, fair wages for their work, and the right to disconnect when they're done with work. Every Australian who deserves the security of a roof over their head or dreams of owning their own home. Every woman who wants her contribution to our economy and society to be valued equally. Every parent who wants their child to get the best start in life with cheaper childcare and with fair funding for every student in every school. Everyone who counts on the National Disability Insurance Scheme. We will be a government for every Australian who wants to train or retrain for new skills and a good job at public TAFE. Every Australian who works hard for the life-changing opportunity of higher education and wants 20% cut from their student debt. Every Australian who knows that climate change is a challenge we must act together to meet for the future of our environment. And knows the fact that renewable energy is an opportunity we must work together to seize for the future of our economy. We will be a government that supports reconciliation with First Nations people Because we will be a stronger nation when we close the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. And friends, we will be a government that relies and helps every Australian who relies on Medicare. Because this card is not Labor red or Liberal blue, it is green and gold. It is a declaration of our national values in our national colours. Medicare belongs to all Australians, and together we will make it stronger for all Australians. Friends, I stand here tonight as the proud leader of an extraordinary team. I stood on the hallowed turf of the G this morning, doing live crosses, making that point. I want to thank all of my colleagues, beginning with my friend, our incredible Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles. No one could hope for a better deputy, and I thank him so much. My friend and our Senate leader, Penny Wong, and her deputy, Don Farrell, our economic team led by Jim Chalmers and Katie Gallagher, our campaign spokesperson Jason Clare, and we've got a bit of a shared party tonight, and Berkey's here, the member for Watson. My amazing Labor caucus, which when you look at it across the benches, it's representative of the Australian people. I acknowledge all of our fantastic Labor candidates in every seat who put up their hand, gave up their time for our cause and their community. If you excuse me for singling out one of them who ran for a third time in Dixon, Ailey Frantz. So many of whom will be joining us as caucus members in Parliament. I want to thank the people of Grayndler, most of whom are here tonight. I've got to say something, it was very special on the way here. There was obviously, I don't know whether there was a drone above us or what have you. My security team said, you know, maybe they're just out on the street. People don't just hang out on New Canterbury Road. And from Lilyfield, Leichhardt, all the way here, I'm sorry, but I won't be moving back for a little while. The people of Grayndler did me an incredible honour. in choosing me as their representatives 29 years and 10 elections ago. I've lived in this community in the Inner West my whole life, and it's an incredible privilege to serve a community that you love, and I do love it. To the Labor Party's heart and soul, our rank and file members and the mighty trade union movement of Australia. The Labor Party will always stand up for jobs and people's wages and conditions. Everywhere I have been through this campaign, your energy, your enthusiasm, your dedication to the cause has lifted me up. You inspire all of us in your service of working people, and we thank you. To our magnificent campaign director, National Secretary Paul Erickson. Paul has run an outstanding campaign. Paul and I did tell people May was the right time. And he managed to become a dad during the campaign. He was supported by an absolutely brilliant team. And all of those dedicated people own a part of this victory. And I thank you. To my personal staff, led by Tim Gartrell. The loyalty, the passion, the commitment that you showed. You have a tough job that you perform with grace, with humour, with joy, and just a passion for changing the country for the better. Thank you for what you do. To my son Nathan, who's grown into a fine young man who I am just so proud of. Thank you. And to my fiancée, Jodie Hayden. Probably wasn't expecting for this to be in your life half a dozen years ago. I am so grateful for your support, your friendship and your love. You make me so happy. Which matters. You have my heart, I love you, and I look forward to living our lives together. My fellow Australians, Australians have chosen the Australian Labor Party as their government. And our government will choose the Australian way because we are proud of who we are and all that we have built together in this country. We do not need to beg or borrow or copy from anywhere else. We do not seek our inspiration overseas. We find it right here in our values and in our people. Tomorrow we dedicate ourselves to your service. We renew the great responsibility and the opportunity of government. and with pride and purpose, optimism and determination, with faith in the fair go and faith in each other, we return to the work of building Australia's future. Thank you all.
Jubilant room there in the inner west of Sydney as the Prime Minister accepts that victory tonight, along with Jody, his fiancée, his son Nathan. We've got one of his colleagues in the cabinet here, Murray Watt. I'll get your reaction to that speech first. No sign of hubris. There were no reference to a win for the true believers, or this is a win for the true believers. This was about what are we going to do for the next 3 years. We're not going to leave anyone behind. No one's held back. It was all about that language, about governing for all, and very careful not to be too triumphal.
That's what I noticed about the speech, Kieran, was how inclusive it was for everyone in the community. You know, he talked about Labor supporters, sure, but he recognised people who've never voted Labor before in their lives. And clearly, a lot of people who haven't voted Labor before did vote for Labor tonight. So, very inclusive. And again, I guess it goes to show the sort of approach that Albo and Labor have tried to take, which is about governing for the whole country and having a broad agenda that spoke to the whole community. So, yeah, I think he's grown enormously in the role. I think he's learned a lot of lessons. I think we've all learned a lot of lessons. And I think remaining really grounded is an important way to start this term.
I want to go back to the room, and Laura and Chris are there. What was it like in the room, guys?
Well, I didn't feel that grounded, I got to say, Murray Watt. He was revelling in the moment, and he's absolutely allowed to. I did think it was very gracious when he spoke about his opponent, Peter Dutton. Obviously, Peter Dutton serving for more than 2 decades in Parliament. To give your life to the public service like that is not a note that was lost on Anthony Albanese at all. But there are a few digs as well. Many references to Australia taking from our own culture. It was very anti-Trump in this message today, and Anthony Albanese felt vindicated by that. He wanted to highlight, once again, a bit of a dig there that the coalition maybe stole a few notes from Donald Trump here. Right or wrong, that's what Labor was able to perpetrate throughout the campaign as well. And I felt there was a doubling down on the welcome to country tonight, which didn't go unnoticed in the room, and I think was done absolutely on purpose. But it is his moment. I mean, he has made history. He not only gets a second term, but he gets a second marriage this term.
Second marriage.
He's going to get married this term.
Look, it was in this room 3 years ago where he made his first major mistake when he committed to the Uluru Statement in full and The Voice. This time he didn't leave it to chance. He had a prepared speech on an auto cue, on a teleprompter. And look, there was a lot of nonsense in the speech about making the country stronger. We know that's not going to happen. We've got economic problems, we've got energy problems, but it was a good speech, a good victory speech. I do want to tip my lid to Peter Dutton for the gracious way he handed over, but I'll just end on this note, and that is something I think just about everyone on the panel would agree with. It's a better thing for this country that we end up with a majority Labor government than a Labor Greens government that many of us thought we'd be looking at. So we at least can see what Anthony Albanese can do with Labor in their own right in the second term.
And I think just quickly, despite the animosity we saw during the campaign and the very personal tone, the monstering really of Peter Dutton, he became a bit of a caricature at times. I think what was on display tonight from Anthony Albanese really is an acknowledgement that he thinks Peter Dutton is a decent man, and he is a thoroughly decent man. One thing that should be said of Peter Dutton, his family is a massive tribute to him as well, but don't forget that he should be given great credit for holding the broad church together for the last 3 years. For the first time in a decade, there wasn't a hint of leadership challenge. They weren't scrambling all over each other to be the next leader. And and so he was able to
did.
hold it together.
And I think we'll see in coming weeks just what a divided Liberal Party looks like.
Yeah, I think you should have a long lunch.
Laura and Chris, thank you very much for that. Let's go live to the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles. Congratulations, an emphatic win. Well, the Cats had a win too by 3 points, and your government has had a thumping win this evening, Richard Marles. How are you feeling this evening?
It's a remarkable night, and it's a very historic night. What we've seen is the re-election of a Prime Minister for the first time in 21 years. As we look at the seat count, and we go, if we are north of 78 seats, it will be the first time in Australian history that we see a government being increasing its majority after a first term. And I think it speaks a lot to the leadership of Anthony Albanese. You know, Albo has consistently been underestimated throughout his political career. But what I see as somebody who works very closely with Anthony is a person who has incredible judgment, incredible experience, but most importantly, fundamental decency. And it is his decency upon which our stability is based, and it's judgment upon which the progress, the direction and the competence of our government is based.
I thought it was very important that he made sure the room was dignified and paid due credit to someone that's contributed a lot to this country and someone that I think you call a friend in Peter Dutton.
I do, and Peter has served the Australian public in the Parliament for more than 20 years. He served as a minister in 2 governments. He's led his party. All of those represent a mighty career, and he has made an enormous contribution to our nation. And certainly as he leaves the Parliament, he does so with enormous goodwill, I think, across the aisle. And he is a person who deserves the thanks of the Australian people. Obviously tonight was not his night, but Peter Dutton is a person who's, I know, has a deep sincerity in wanting to make a contribution to this nation, and he has.
Richard Marles, Andrew Clennell, are you surprised at the emphatic nature of the victory? In a way, it's almost like the Kevin Rudd 2007 victory or rivalling the John Howard 1996 victory when you look at the amount of seats that you might win. Would you have dreamt of this, particularly around January when things were looking distinctively ropey for the government?
Well, look, Andrew, to be honest, throughout the term, I've had a cautious sense of optimism that we would be re-elected. I mean, we've been governing through a difficult period. 3/4 of governments around the democratic world have lost since the pandemic, and that's because of the global inflationary challenge that we've had, the cost of living pressures that have been experienced all around the world, and we've been not immune from that. And so we've been very mindful of it. But that said, we've been fundamentally unified. We have been managing the budget prudently. We've been focusing on our national security, increasing our defence spending, and all of those things in terms of winning that licence on national security, winning that licence on the economy is about getting the basics right, and we've been feeling we've been doing that. And so I felt that when it came to the crunch, we would have something to say about what we've done and have something to say about our way forward. In terms of the magnitude of the win, look, if I'm being honest, this is beyond what I thought was possible. But again, I think it speaks to the way in which Anthony has led us and the way in which we've been able to present our case to the Australian people. And I think what this represents is Australians voting for a leader whose mission is about bringing Australians together.
And how much did Donald Trump play a role in the result? I mean, once again, we heard the Prime Minister there talk about, we're about Australian politics, we're about Australia. Pretty pointed stuff. There was definitely a link from some Australians between Trump and Dutton. That did assist you, didn't it?
Look, I mean, we'll go through all of that in detail, I think, when we do our review of this election. My instinct right now is that I don't think it played a hugely significant role. I mean, it's really been something that's been in place over the last few weeks. But fundamentally, I think it is what we've been doing over the last 3 years, the campaign we've run, which, and I take my hat off to Paul Erickson and his team, this is absolutely the best campaign I've ever been a part of, and it's very much credit to him and his work. And we've had really strong message discipline in terms of being able to make our case to the Australian people. Now, what we've been as a government over the last 3 years doesn't have anything to do with any leaders from elsewhere in the world, and the campaign that we ran didn't have anything to do with that either. And I think that's the fundamental core ingredient. What I would say is that I do think Australians, when they look beyond our shores, see a world which is fragile, which is unpredictable, which is volatile. And in that moment, I think it makes sense that Australians would be voting for stability and for a government which is able to maintain our relationships with countries right around the world. And we certainly pride ourselves on having been able to do that over the last 3 years.
Richard Marles, thank you. And actually 3 wins for you tonight. The Cats, Labor and a young bloke called Sam Marles winning a mixed martial arts fight. A professional bout, a little birdie told me. How about
Sam,
that? Congratulations, Sam.
Yeah, Sam had a massive win. Thank you. He had a massive win. He had a massive win in Logan tonight. So I had my eyes on that, and he got a knockout. He knocked out his opponent in the 3rd round. So I've got to say, at one point, I was very, very much shouting in this room, and everyone else was wondering, what is he doing? Anyway, yeah, we're a very excited and happy family tonight.
Congratulations to you and to Sam. And let's go live to Tony Abbott, someone who's done a bit of boxing himself over the years. He's holding a doorstop.
It's a significant achievement to be the first Prime Minister since John Howard and the first Labor Prime Minister since Bob Hawke to be returned to government. So he deserves everyone's congratulations. What I really do want to say, though, is to reassure people who voted Liberal today and people who normally vote for the Coalition not to lose heart. At our best, we are the Freedom Party, we are the Tradition Party, we are the Patriot Party. And at our best, I believe that we can be the natural party of government. Now, as an Australian patriot, I hope that the Australian government, of whatever complexion, succeeds. I hope that the Albanese government succeeds for our country's sake. I fear, though, that a re-elected government will double down on the things it was doing in its first term, and I very much fear that the energy self-harm will continue, that the economic stagnation will accelerate, that the social division will get worse, and that the strategic peril will continue to be neglected. What that means is that if the Coalition can create a clear contest and a strong contrast over the next term, we can certainly be competitive and give Australia the best possible government.
How do you win these voters back, Mr Abbott?
Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott there with a message that he wants Liberal supporters to maintain hope and that they can turn things around. It's not always easy on a night like tonight for a political party to think that, but we do think back to Anastasia Palaszczuk. There were only a handful of members and she won the next election. So there is always hope in politics. Let's bring in Ashley Gillen now, who's speaking to a very important local there in Cottesloe.
Kieran, yes, thank you. Look, it is also looking like a very good night for Labor here in WA. We are a couple of hours behind you on the East Coast, of course, in the count, but it's also looking like an extremely good night for Kate Chaney. We're seeing a swing towards her, yet to be finally called, but Kate Chaney, it looks like you're heading back to Canberra.
Well, I certainly would rather be in my position than my opponents at this stage. We're not calling it yet, but I'm so proud of the campaign that we've run and the incredible volunteer energy that has driven this community movement. And I'm just so happy.
majority a good outcome for you and other independents, though, in the Parliament when it comes to your importance in terms of passing key pieces of legislation? Would you have preferred a minority result tonight?
Look, no matter what the government looks like, I will do what I've done for the last 3 years, and that is assess every piece of legislation on the merits and act in accordance with the values of Curtin. And I think if we have a parliament that does that, we will get better legislation, no matter who's in government.
At the last election, we heard a lot about the Teal experiment. Today, we've seen a really good result for a lot of independents right around the country. Teal's the independents, you're here to stay?
I think that people all over Australia have seen what it looks like when they have a representative that answers to them, not a party, and they like it. And tonight we're seeing they like it.
Okay, very happy Kate Chaney here in Perth, Kieran. We are starting to see the rest of the results come through. Labor looks like it might pick up more. That's a seat that really hadn't been talked about as being in play into the last few days of this campaign. So we'll keep you updated with more results, but it's looking very good for the Labor Party over here.
Ash, yep, and as you said, for the Teal there too. Kate Chaney, thank you, Ash Gillen. Let's bring in get some more analysis. They're all screaming and yelling and happy. Chris Uhlmann, what's your read of where we are right now?
It's a catastrophe for the coalition, and they will now need to go away and work out what kind of party they are, which will be a very difficult thing, and I imagine they'll tear themselves apart in the process. And because I'm old, I was thinking, when was the last time we saw a percentage different in the two-party preferred like this? Well, I think it was 1975. At this stage, the coalition is tracking towards, and things could come back in, having a worse result in percentage terms on two-party preferred than the Whitlam government did when it was defeated by Fraser back in 1975. That would be the biggest difference in TPP since the Second World War. So
what was that TPP?
That one was 55.7 to 44.3, and at the moment we're looking at Labor on 55.9 to 44.1. So it'll be, get your glasses out to see which was the worst result since the Second World War. The other thing too, at the moment we're looking at a position where the coalition is struggling to get over 40. Now, you thought that the distance last time was large in getting to government. This is the sort of distance that will completely dismay the people in the Liberal Party, those that are left, and when they have their party room meeting, at least they won't have to have too much of an argument because there won't be that many of them around.
I've got to say that when Albanese was elected, someone from the right wing of the Labor Party who didn't particularly like Albanese did say to me, this guy's a left-wing Howard. And that's a pretty big call, and certainly Peter Credler to sit there going, give me a break, he's not a reformer, he's nothing like that, and fair enough. But I mean in terms of his political skills and what he could do from here in terms of serving, he is very savvy politically, like John Howard was.
I think he's a hyper-political operator, right? I think he's political to his bootstraps. People tell me if you want to talk to him about economic parameters, the eyes glaze over. But if you want to talk about a shift in a particular seat, he knows the seat, he knows the boundary, he knows who's running the campaign. I mean, he will play every margin on the politics. And I do think there's an affability, whether that's manufactured or real, there's an affability that has translated beautifully across the country. I think the difficulty for the Liberal Party, and this goes to Chris's point, we are being squeezed at this end and we're being squeezed at this end. And that's the challenge. How do you then sell a product when you're not really sure what you're selling, right? You're selling to one end of the marketplace and then you're trying to sell to the other end of the marketplace, but you've got one product to put on the shelf. Not easy.
Look, I just have to say this in passing because, I live in Canberra and I'm being bombarded with messages from my friends in the Labor Party in the ACT who are saying, how do you lose the seat of Bean when there's a swing and so things aren't looking good there for David Smith, but the character assessments that are going on at the moment for him inside the local ALP aren't that great.
What about something that
I'm just going to defend
Richmond and Wills, they've lost seats.
I'll tell you how you do that. When the Liberal Party doesn't turn up and comes third in the race and preferences a Teal.
That's what those primary figures that were just on just before actually showed the primary vote for Labor not actually falling that much.
Something we all can agree on. Let's have a look at the seat in Melbourne.
Oh, it's not me, mate.
Let's just didn't turn up.
Look at this one in Richmond, though. Look at Richmond as well. Let's first of all check out Richmond, then we'll go back to Melbourne. Richmond is one where the Greens look like they've picked up one as well, Peter.
Maybe.
Northern New South Wales?
We're not giving up on
maybe.
Richmond yet.
No, Richmond will be fine in my view.
You
just
think
think
you'll be
Chris's yeah, I do.
There's Nat's
It's a
preferences
low-
and others.
I just want to pick up on
It's a
Chris's
low
point.
number of votes counted.
It sure is.
Albo and I were elected in 1996.
Yes.
We had a caucus of 49.
Yeah.
There you go.
The two-party preferred spread was about 7 points, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
you-
the
you're
LNP this
spot
time
on.
will
Okay.
be about 46
Yeah.
probably.
Interestingly, of course,
48 maybe.
Kim Beazley won less than 3 years. Oh, sorry, won the popular vote and the
Less than
two-party
3 years
preferred vote.
Yeah, but it took a
Less than
GST.
three.
It took
Yeah,
a
no,
GST.
Well, you didn't let me finish. Or, you know, I recognise that John Howard did promise a GST if he was.
But it's good, that you're giving
number.
comfort to the Liberal Party, mate. I think that
Let's
that's
bring up that Melbourne
yes.
number.
very, very gracious of you.
Well, I'll
So
tell
he's
you
got his nose in front there, Adam Ban.
I'll tell you what, for many years we've lamented no reform because there's 2 close elections. Now he hasn't got an excuse, Albanese.
There's no
has he?
excuse. There's no excuse.
And that's how you can get into trouble, by the way.
So
I
would
mean,
you-
if he goes well in the Senate
100%.
too.
100%. I remember very well that win in 2004.
I didn't get a chance to reflect on Albo's speech.
Please do.
Of course, it's probably the easiest speech you'll ever make. But I agree with everything that Murray said. There was no hubris. It was respectful, inclusive. But the thing that really stood out for me is that it was consistent with everything he'd said in the campaign. There might have been a bit of emphasis on a couple of things, weighted emphasis, but it was very consistent with what he said, what he's been saying, and what he said he would do. And just one last point on him, he doesn't even have to serve out the full term before becoming Labor's second longest serving
Really?
Prime Minister.
Really?
And he's growing, like he is growing.
Not even that-
He grew
not
through
even
this
the full
campaign.
term.
No, I
He's
think-
grown in stature throughout.
But what
his-
Andrew said, what Andrew said there,
Fisher had was well over 4 years, but not in consecutive terms. You know, he-
Multiple stints. Yeah.
Keating was
I think
4 and a
Keating.
bit.
I think Keating is 4 years and
months.
4 months or something. So no, half a term.
I want to reflect on something Andrew touched on with the Albanese-Howard comparison. And I know that some people will say that's ridiculous,
No, you can't go there.
but there are other similarities that I would mention here as well. It's not just the longevity and all that, but it's the thing where, and Andrew Bolt raised this before, that Anthony Albanese has reached out to him, one of his biggest critics, and texts him and communicates. The guy will communicate and engage with every platform. He doesn't, blackball you because you criticise him. He engages with everyone. In fact, he's come on with Andrew and I more than any other media outlet in Australia over the last term. Now, people would say that Sky News isn't always complimentary to him, but he's always engaging with us. Which I think that's a real positive.
Howard never took it personally. Howard was
never took it
fantastic. I used
personally.
to have a real crack at Howard, and he never took it personally. He was always very good.
My observation is that is how he deals with the media and reaches out to a broad range of media outlets. But also that is how he has tried to govern, especially in the second half of this term, is by building that kind of broad coalition of support. And I guess you've got to give John Howard his due. He did that as well. He took voters off Labor and the Howard battlers. We are reaching into traditional Liberal territory and turning people into Labor voters. That is transformational for Australian politics if you can make that go on.
I think the other aspect, I know it's a bit beltway, but I have to say that I think the National Secretary, Paul Ericsson's a bit of a genius, really.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for this result.
And I know that he had a view a year ago this was possible and that it was going to be about a choice. And, some of these things were outlined to me and I was very sceptical, and it's all emerged to be the case.
Yeah, Peter, and something that Tony Abbott did very successfully, and we heard him tonight talking about the values proposition, but you just have to be sharp about what you stand for, don't you? And not sort of go one way this way, one way that, in terms of we knew what he had proposed back in the day, Tony Abbott, but it wasn't just the headline. There was substance. He had policies delivered. This just seemed like it was back and forth, and then you had big policy over here but didn't stick to it, and
I couldn't
then
agree
you
more.
look at the result.
And I think you have to have all those values imbued in the leader. And I think that's where, to give him his credit, Albanese is absolutely to his bootstraps a Labor man. And Tony Abbott, absolutely, as was Howard, a fundamentally conservative Liberal to their bootstraps. And you never had to ask Tony Abbott, or when I sat there and was briefing Mr Howard, you never had to ask them, well, what do you think about this? They instinctively knew. And they'd say,
100%.
even if we, I'm going to do the work on it, I'll take it through the party room, let's look at legislation. But my instinct is they knew exactly where they would go.
It's so much easier when they actually believe in it, isn't it?
Yeah. And it shows, right? You don't have to tart it up, Otherwise, it's lipstick on a pig that's still a pig. If you're trying to sell something that you don't believe in, it comes through. And authenticity is key.
Yeah, no, that is the magic dust, isn't it, in politics? Tom Connell's with us, our chief election analyst. Tom?
Kieran, what a night, what a turn-up in the end. Let's look at how exactly this whole result happened. National primary, first of all, the coalition dropping. Now, remember, not so long ago in published polls, they were at 40, 41, 30 is what they're polling on the night. I think this will pick up a bit in particular with postals. Just going to have that caveat before we sort of set this as a record low, but that's where it is right now. Also worth noting a couple of states where it really hurt them. So we heard, not much joy in New South Wales in the past couple of weeks. It got a lot worse than that, losing that much primary and Labor's getting boosted. And Queensland, this was emerging as the dark horse. You can see how much their primaries dropped. Look, they're still above the ALPs, and we're going to see it tick up a bit with postals. But that's where they lost in terms of that primary vote. We had at the start of the night as well the pendulum, and this said Labor had a very slim majority they were trying to defend. And again, not so long ago, thinking they might be in a little bit of trouble here. What happened? Well, we hit the pendulum and it went off the screen, off the charts, as you said earlier before, Kieran. State of the House and where this leaves things right now. So this was before the evening, 78. Labor loses 3, it loses its majority. Instead, they're going the other way. They're already at 81. They're going to go a little bit higher than that would be my prediction, towards the mid-80s. The question's going to be, what sort of tally can the coalition cobble together here? Whether they're heading for something with a 4 in front of it. Well, right now, that would be an improvement, wouldn't it? Let's look, for example, at the seats still very close right now. For example, we call these our cliffhangers. You can see a lot of these are very tight here. Some of these very small leads, look, I would expect in particular those top 4, there'd be a good chance the Liberal Party win them because of that pre-poll, and postal reliably will go back to them. So that would be something for them. The next page here, Bowman, again, they've got a lead. Fowler's obviously an independent and Labor contest. Goldstein there, the lead for the Teal. That was going to be very close on that. And then Ford, Labor ahead, can you believe, in Ford? So that one's going to be quite tight given that lead right now. In other words, look, I think they can win quite a few still on the page, especially Forrest with a 4% lead. Ryan will be complicated, but they're going to sort of get to low 40s on these current trajectories, depending on what else might be happening. And part of that reason has been other seats they have been losing. Let's have a look in Queensland, because the other thing I want to focus on is how big or small will the crossbench be after all of this. Let's go to Brisbane. This was the green wall. Brisbane will go, Griffith will go. What about Ryan? Will they hang on to 1? It looks good, but that's them against the LNP. If we have a look at the primary vote, this is where it gets complicated. Labor's formula is get to that final 2 and then they can win the seat. Look, there's some chance they get there. They've got to make up, as you can see at the moment, 3%, but they could get a little bit closer, Labor versus the Greens, on that pre-poll and that postal. So where do they get it from? People First, One Nation, they might get a little bit of that vote. More of it will go to the Liberal Party and then some of these minor parties. I think right now the Greens will probably still win, Ryan, but it is still a contest. How close that primary gets before preferences will be the key. So they look like they hang on to 1, the Greens there in Brisbane. Then we go to Victoria, where they have their, of course, other seat, the first one they won there. And they've got a couple of possibilities. Melbourne is down to 1.8%. Their leader, Adam Bant, right now is in the fight of his life. You can see not a huge amount is counted here. A lot of these people don't vote in the electorate, so you get absent votes and so on. Right now, if we take a look at that 2-party preferred, you can see a swing, and we're calling that too close for right now. We don't have enough of the vote for me to comment there. The other one, though, is Wills. This is one perhaps they can actually pick up if Wills is going to... There we go. Look how close this is, 50.03. Samantha Ratnam had a bigger lead earlier on. We can see the primary here at the moment, 1% off Peter Khalil, 1% for Samantha Ratnam. So clearly this is very close. Again, this is so close, this actual margin right now, 44% counted again. There'd be a good chance for Peter Khalil that those pre-polls and postals help him. We want to see a batch or 2 before we'd be able to say that. So it's calling probable hold. That's a little bit bold of the system there, I'd say. In fact, we're seeing now 51.29 and some funny things on that swing. But anyway, that's going to be a very close seat there in Wills. The other element I want to look at in Victoria, which the panel's been talking about as well, is just some of these other seats when we look at Melbourne and surrounds. And these counts that are on now, Casey, Labor's taken the lead in, Deakin 3.7 ahead, and I think we've got Menzies in there as well at 2.9. So they're going to need pre-poll and postal to try to save them in those areas. And very quickly in Perth as well, we're going to the centre here. Again, the story is all Labor. Fremantle could be a fascinating three-way contest. No pickups and even more could go into Labor hands as well, Kieran. So absolutely no saviour here in WA. We're going to keep watching this count, but we expect Labor to push up and win even more seats beyond into the mid-80s.
Yeah, wow. Tom, great job as always. Thank you so much for everything you've done tonight. Tom Connell, I want to go live to our colleague Pete Stefanovic with just a little story there in Dixon. What an unbelievable event we've seen there with Ailey France winning against Peter Dutton, Pete.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got a history maker here this evening, Kieran. Good to talk to you again. Ailey France, the new member for Dixon. You slayed a dragon tonight. How do you feel about that?
I feel incredibly grateful and proud of all of the people who have campaigned in this seat for such a long time. You know, it's been 7 years of really hard work. And yeah, it's such a privileged position to be in, and I thank the people of Dixon. Like, whether you voted for me or not, or whether you voted Labor for the first time, I'm actually so grateful. Yeah, it's emotional, I think. It's emotional for me.
Has it even sunk in? We were talking just a couple of days ago, and I said, you know, you're 0 for 2. If you lose this one, would you go again? Did you really think that you would knock out the opposition leader?
I expected it to be a lot closer than it was. But I was hopeful, obviously. I think after 7 years of a lot of hard work, a lot of grassroots campaigning, and just being in the community as much as I can, I'm happy that, you know, people have seen that I really care about Dixon, and I've put a lot of effort into this. So yeah, it feels good, but yeah, it was a bit unexpected, the result. Like I was hopeful, but yeah, it's lovely. It's really great. I'm so grateful.
And can I just ask, on a personal note, you've been through so much grief in your life. You lost your son last year. You lost your leg years ago after a terrible accident. How do you reconcile all of that with this victory this evening?
Well, life's bittersweet, isn't it? It is a series of highs and lows. I think my son, Henry, he wanted me to do this. He was convinced that I would win this. It's amazing, actually. We discussed it a lot, and I thought I wouldn't be running because I would be caring for him. And he would say to me, "No, Mum, you have to do this. I know you're going to win this time." And I feel he's been with me on this journey, and although it's been hard, I've just thought about his strength in his journey, and that's kept me going, really. Yeah, I think he's celebrating somewhere. I wish he was here, obviously. It's still hard. But I'm really grateful that all the volunteers here have had this opportunity. Some of them have been campaigning in Dixon for 20 years, and it's for them that this is really, it's their win as well. Like, it's not me, it's their win, so.
Well, we better let you get back to your party now. Congratulations again. We know that you'll also be a champion for the NDIS, no doubt, too. The member for Dixon, Ailey France, thank you very much and congratulations. So on that note, I'll send it back to you, Kieran. The party here, it's only just starting.
Understandably. Well done. Thank you, Pete. Appreciating that sign. The corflute behind Ailey France MP. So she's done it. Let's get some final thoughts with our panel tonight. I want to start with Barnaby Joyce. We'll go right around. But, yeah, just a few final thoughts, if we can, on what is an historic evening.
Well, first of all, laurels to Central Queensland that have really held in there, and there was a big battle to Alison Penfold in line. Well done. We're looking to see how Andrew Leathleen goes down there. It'd be good. A big shout out to Kimberly Hone, fought such a hard fight, and I'm going to have to hit the Labor Party up for some of the money I raised for her, because it looks like it's getting Labor across the line again. And back to the Battle of Marathon, I seen about 50k your way. So it's to the Battle of Marathon. It looks like Pat Conahan's, when the postals come in, will survive. And that's against in excess of $1 million campaign that was thrown at him. So well done, Patrick Conahan. The thing to watch, of course, will be the Senate and see how that works out. That's still to come. That will be a fascinating thing. And don't get carried away, guys, with doom. This idea that, oh, we're at 56, we've killed the pig. No, these things go in swings and roundabouts. Just hang about.
Hang about. That's the advice from Barnaby Joyce. Sarah Henderson, your thoughts?
Well, Kieran, congratulations again to the Prime Minister and the Labor Party. It's an emphatic victory. We have a lot of soul-searching to do. In Victoria, we've lost some wonderful members of Parliament, Michael Sukkar, Keith Wallahan, to name but a few. We've also had some great gains. Mary Aldred, a wonderful new Member of Parliament, we hope in Monash. But as I've said before tonight, we will rebuild. Our supporters have been magnificent. Our members have been magnificent, but we've got a lot of work to do. We will not tear ourselves apart. We will do this in a mature, systematic, methodical way to work out what went wrong, to make sure that we are competitive going forward.
Chris?
It's an historic night, and Anthony Albanese now enters the pantheon of Labor legends. He's had one of the most convincing wins in Labor's history, coming from a very, very difficult position. And the Coalition has suffered an epic defeat, almost an extermination event in some ways, where it's gone backwards in every single state across Australia, when normally a government loses in a first term, at least loses some skin. So Anthony Albanese has improved the Labor Party's primary vote, and it's absolutely, staying on about 86 seats here at the moment. One of the readouts I can see, the Coalition will be lucky to crack 40 seats. I think the worst result they have ever had in terms of seats was 50 seats back when Bob Hawke won, and that was in a parliament of 125. This is now a parliament of 150. So the distance back from here for the Coalition is large. That is not to say it can't be done, but I think we're seeing a structural realignment in Australian politics, and that may be a very difficult thing for the Coalition to overcome.
Peter Credlin.
Well, I think I have to say to the Prime Minister, congratulations. To the Labor Party, congratulations. My husband once was the Liberal Party federal director, so I say to Paul Erickson and his family, that is a tremendous effort in a campaigning sense. There'll be soul searching. I wonder whether or not our loss in 2022 was papered over because everyone put it down to Morrison. It was just the Morrison factor, I'm not confident. This is rock bottom now, but I'm not confident they understood that they could fall even further if they did not do the work. And I think very clearly in policy terms, the work wasn't done. It wasn't socialised early enough. Everybody, both sides, lost a whole year because of the voice. The way in which you communicate, the multiple channels to market these days means that things have to be out there for months and months and months. It's not a case of an ad at 6 o'clock in the middle of a 33-day campaign. So I think the platform for the Liberal Party will be challenged by all the reverberations now that happen in the party room, the leadership changes that will come, the debates, nuclear on, nuclear off, all of these things will come. It'll be a pretty turbulent time for the Liberal Party. Labor will be supremely united. I hope we do not tear ourselves apart, and I hope we can rebuild relatively quickly, because the best thing for Australia is that you have a strong opposition.
Absolutely. It's strong for democracy and important. Andrew?
I saw John Howard underestimated for a lot of years by the Canberra Press Gallery. Anthony Albanese's been underestimated for a long time, and tonight sort of puts paid to that. Having said that, Peter Dutton will be remembered for one of the worst campaigns and worst approaches to policy by an opposition ever, and that's kind of sad for him. I've got to say the government's over the hill now to some extent. Unemployment's 4.1. Inflation's now 2.4. They will always hope to hit low inflation at that election time, but they need to guard against hubris. And this is what happens when you have big victories. And so I think we've got some interesting days ahead, because they've got a lot of challenges ahead with the energy system, as you all have pointed out, and with Donald Trump as well.
Anthony Albanese said when he won the first time that he was planning for more than just one term, for 2-3 terms, a long-term Labor government. He's achieved it, or at least the second part of it tonight.
Yeah, he did say that, Kieran, and he made very clear that he thought we needed a long-term Labor government to be able to embed some of the policies that we stand for. Obviously, a second term gives us an opportunity to do more of that, and I don't think you will see any signs of hubris. I think that everyone has learned a lot from this term about the way to get things done and the way to be inclusive for the whole community. One thing I do want to just say at the end of the night, I do want to give a shout out to my Queensland colleagues. We've had a really good result in Queensland tonight. We've underperformed at the federal level for far too long. We held 5 House of Rep seats out of 30 heading into this election, but it looks